Any other things you can think about for code security?
Well, something that's just triggered my thought looking at this secure headers, because you can also apply headers at the Nginx level. So like, I don't do a lot of setting of the headers uh, for security purposes. I think in Rails, like I haven't used this secure headers library, but I do set headers at the Nginx level. And what I do for some validation of that is there's a site called sslabs.com, and that validates your server certificate, but it also gives you a score based on how you've configured SSL, or essentially TLS now, security for your web server. So it is kind of blurring the line between code and infrastructure, but that's another site I use to say, once I've done my configuration or looking at an application, all right, is it getting an A+ on the SSL Labs assessment, for example?
Right. And that's the SSL stuff is usually fairly straightforward to check, and it's worth, I mean, even if you're on a big team and you're not like I am, and you're not the network person or people, it's still a good thing to kind of pay attention to that and understand what's going on there, so that because understanding how the server security works helps you write code that will work better for that.
Yeah, and because the lines are blurred, because headers can be set at the Nginx level, headers can be set at the Rails level, so it's you kind of need to work in harmony with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and because you can turn, I mean, in Rails you can turn SSL off for a particular page in the code, which you shouldn't ever do that, but you can. But you should understand the ramifications of doing something like that. It's important to understand those things.
Yeah, there's so many things that are being enforced with SSL. Like, I've never ran SSL in my development environment when I'm doing development, but now I'm thinking, to avoid all of these errors that the browsers now indicate, because Firefox, if I'm using Firefox or Chrome, there's these errors, and the whole same site attribute gives different reporting based upon if you're on an SSL connection or not. I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and, again, run Nginx as a front end with HTTPS on my dev environment, or try to figure out how to use SSL with, a Ruby or an Elixir web server or something.
Right.
So, I mean, this is kind of to the side, but security has become so important, and it's becoming more of a burden to kind of do the development side of things. Kind of like, all right, I'm going to have to implement security here, so I know, avoid some of these errors. Because sometimes I look at it like, why is this error happening? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, it's only because I'm running HTTP in my dev environment. It's fine in production,
Yeah. So, I mean, and I always ran SSL in my devs because I wanted to be as close as possible in my dev to my staging and production servers, so I knew what I was developing. But you're right. Lately, SSL has almost become a requirement because it's doing a lot more than it used to do.
Well, I mean, everybody's essentially, and it's good, but everybody's moving towards this is the way to go.
Right.
So,
well, and it used to be a lot of people would turn off SSL for things because SSL was slow.
Yeah, but that's not the case.
But it's actually anymore. Faster now, and you get SEO preference from Google for having SSL, and there's all kinds of benefits and not really any downsides that I see anymore. But again, that's part of the security thing that's important to understand when you're doing development. You need to understand how SSL works and what implications it has for whether you use it or not.
Now, do you enable SSL in your web application server, like your Puma, in your dev environment, or are you running Nginx in your dev environment as a front end to your Pumas, for example?
I've done both. It depends on the project I'm working on and how involved it is. But I have actually run Nginx in my dev environment, because there was a project I was working on where I did that because I needed to be able to hit my dev environment from an external machine to test things across machines. If you don't have to do that, I don't really see a reason to run Nginx. Just run SSL in your Puma or whatever your server is. But yeah, I have done both. It's not easy. I mean, it's not, well, okay. It's not a cakewalk to set that stuff up, especially in a dev environment with all the weird things that happen in dev environments. But once you get it set up, it's done.
Yeah.
So, and then you know, if you're testing something on your local, you know it's going to have all the same behaviors that it will on a real server. So that helps.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.